Cool. So it's nice to finally meet you. I've been
Yeah,
following your
nice to meet you
Instagram account for a long time. Obviously, I'm trying my best to do my homework on the show and on you. And I took a deep dive on your Instagram, and I realized I was wondering, why haven't you trademarked the double finger pistols and the Mental Monday thing? You always start with the same thing every time, so I think it's pretty impressive. You should make it. You should trademark it.
Yeah, that was like kind of a joke that I started doing, and then someone said that I looked like the cover of a Limp Bizkit record, like the Significant Other record, where it's like that guy in the front and he's like this. So I kind of like memed myself, and yeah, I don't know, it just sticks. So like, just business wise, I don't know, like people will like do it back, and like it's just good for marketing, man. Like people remember that. People remember, yeah, exactly. They know it. They know it's coming, and they know like I'm gonna end with stay hated motherfuckers. Like it just creates an expectation and like a cleanness to it every time. And for me, it's easier because I don't have to sit there and like think about what I'm going to say to start it, what I'm going to say to end it. It's always the same, and then I just have to fill in the middle part.
Yeah. So there was one thing I was thinking about in your, you always stay hating and all that. So I'm in a group of guys that I work out with, or I used to when I was playing college ball, and everybody's wearing shirts that say like villain, and just really embrace the bad boy, embrace the image. And basically we're just talking about it's okay to be the villain, because in the sport, especially in baseball. So that's where my background is, but in lifting and everything else as well. I mean, you are competing with everyone. So in their eyes, you are the villain. So that's something that I always thought was fascinating.
So actually,
like the anti-hero or whatever.
Yeah. So actually like the stay hated thing, it started kind of in a negative way, like, stay hated, like middle fingers up, like, fuck you, like, I'm going to be whoever. But it has turned into like this positive thing where it's like people are gonna, it doesn't matter. Like you could be the best fucking, like Kobe fucking Bryant, like you could be the best, whatever, Michael Jordan, like you could be whoever, and there's still going to be these losers that are going to hate you just because you're better or because you're authentically yourself or like genuinely yourself. So like it turned into this positive thing where it's like, yeah, stay hated because they're going to hate you anyway. So you might as well be like the realest you can be and like, do what makes you happy. Because if I stopped doing what I wanted to do because people said that it was stupid or they didn't like it, like my life would be like drastically different, like very much different than what it is. So it's kind of, it is definitely like abrasive, and people like see it and might not fully understand it off rip. But I think like once people like talk to me or talk to my clients or people who are close to the brand, they get it pretty quick. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like, oh, okay, this isn't like a negative thing. It's actually like a positive thing, but it makes it easier to be like yourself when you can just say like, fuck y'all. Like if you hate me, like that's your problem. That's not my problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that mentality or that mindset, I've read a lot about your journey in your life. I mean, going from when you were playing college hockey and then getting involved with opiates and all the challenges that you had there. And you ended up being on Westside and having all of that success. So I just kind of wanted to touch on different parts of your life as a lifter,
Sure.
as a coach, and just as a person.
Sure.
I was watching one of your interviews and you were talking about you were getting into powerlifting to essentially stay out of trouble, if you will, so to speak. So I'm curious as to what your mindset was, or what that conversation that you had with yourself was, trying to get clean and then going into a new sport.
Yeah. So like I had like lifted, and in college and coming up, like playing hockey and stuff, I had always lifted and trained, but I never really enjoyed it because I was an athlete. So like my favorite thing was to play my sport. I didn't like really give a shit about the weight room, but I had a kind of a low base knowledge of like how to lift weights, kind of, or I thought I did. And basically, like when I cleaned up and got off dope, I was like skinny fat. I started to get like I was never like jacked or anything when I was like younger and shit, but I got like fluffy and shitty looking, and I didn't like it. So I was like, all right, I have to start doing something to like look better. And then when I started training, it became like obsessive for me. Even when I was at a Planet Fitness and didn't know what the fuck I was doing, it was a way to like escape sort of like the things that I felt badly about, or the parts of myself that I didn't like. It was easier to like deal with those things because I was still like working in a kitchen. I was working around people that I used to party with. I was working with people who still embraced that lifestyle. So like I couldn't really fucking get away from it. And I was skateboarding a lot at the time too. And that culture for sure, like at that point especially, was like party culture, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just like, I couldn't get away from it. So when I was in the gym, I started training with a couple guys that I knew from like hardcore and punk shows. And it was like a way for me to have like sort of like that camaraderie that you might have with a sport. And it was a way for me to just like literally kick the shit out of myself for 3 fucking hours and forget about like, the fact that I had like stolen money from my parents, stolen money from my jobs, like, like lied to friends, lied to family, and, was shitty to women and shitty to girls that I dated. And it was like a way to get away from all that. And I honestly don't think I really even knew that that's what I was doing. I was just fucking doing it. Like I was just like trying to like survive is what I felt like. It was like, okay, like if I don't do something with my free time, like I'm just going to start putting OxyContin up my nose again. Like I need to like, I need to do something because this is not how I envisioned my life. And so, yeah, it kind of happened. I don't want to say on accident, but it started as a way to escape, and it turned into, obviously like jumping way forward, like it turned into my entire life. And I turned into like an athlete, not so much a guy who uses lifting weights as like therapy, because I did end up going to therapy, with all that stuff. But there's an end game to using something like that as like a replacement. So eventually I kind of figured out how to deal with my own emotional stuff and my own trauma that made me be the way that I was. And the lifting became something that I was just super fucking passionate about, and that I believe can like really help other people.
Yeah, that's definitely not easy. I can't imagine going through that myself. And the reason why I wanted to talk about the reason why I wanted to talk about the crowd and like the group of people that I'm around is because I'm working in college athletics myself. So I've seen some athletes kind of get in with the wrong group of people, or maybe not the best group of people to put themselves around. And I was thinking, for you as a coach, you've seen successful athletes. I guess, how do you approach that if you were to see that, or what type of thought process that the athlete has to get out of that to make a difference? I mean, if you're stuck around people that you used to go out with, I'm curious, what exactly does that transition look like?
Well, so for me, it was like making a fucking decision, like being like, okay, like these people are not helping me. Like my path has changed. So being on the same path as them is not going to fucking work anymore. And so like, I just cut people out of my life. Like and the thing is like, I work with athletes now, and lifters, and we just bought this gym in New Hampshire and stuff. So I'm around a bunch of like college and high school athletes now. And, I've only been up here for like a month or so. So I don't have like really crazy strong relationships with them. But I did coach as a kid. I coached hockey my whole fucking life. And like, you can't make somebody, like the same way you can't make someone like a dog when it comes to like training, like you can't make them. Like you can't make somebody not want to do the dumb shit. All you can do is tell them and show them that you're, that there's another way. You know what I mean? Like you can tell them about your experiences. So, I've had a few conversations at the gym already since we've been here with younger people, where I kind of tell them like, hey man, like, I'm 11 years off of opiates. Like I turned my life around. Like be careful with who you let in your circle, because like, people who are in that part of their life, they need other people in that part of their life, because they need people to say, well, I'm not as bad because this guy's doing this or this guy's doing that. They need you there, because then they can commiserate. And it's really difficult to try and pull somebody out of that. So it's one of those things where it's like, they have to want it, like you can't. I needed to hit rock bottom. Like my parents needed to say, get the fuck out of the house. Like I needed to lose relationships. I needed that. For some people just need to get slapped around by somebody older and bigger than them. Like some people just, that didn't really work for me. Like it wouldn't have done anything. Like some people just need a stern talking to, and some people need to like fuck up every part of their life before they go, oh shit, like this is not the way. And so for me, I had to fuck up a lot of stuff in my life. I just happened to be very fortunate that a lot of the relationships that I had before I got involved with that stuff, those people actually cared about me. And so when I turned it around, I was able to rebuild those relationships. But yeah, you can't force anybody to, like you're either a badass or you're not. You can't teach that. In the same way, you can't teach someone to value their life. They're either going to value it or they're not. So I try to like put my energy into people who want to get better, want to be successful. And, obviously you reach out to people who need help, but there's a limit to it.
Yeah, I staying on that thread sort of, and kind of moving forward. But you got out, you got all your stuff, you transitioned, and then you ended up in Ohio.
Yeah.
So you were at Westside, and obviously it's a different group of people. But I'm curious, I guess, what for me, while I was in college, so college and professional baseball are very simple. They're very straightforward. There's a group of people. Now that's your training group.
Yeah.
But now you're a part of one of the most elite gyms in the world. So what was that transition? Obviously, you were the new guy on the block. So yeah. I'm curious what your approach was.
Honestly, like someone said to me early on, like I like to talk a lot. I'm a loud guy. I am like a rah-rah. Like I like being in the mix. I like goofing off. I like getting serious. I'm the guy who's screaming in videos and shit. That's just who I am as a person. But someone had told me, like, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, because you should listen twice as much as you speak. And so I went into that situation at Westside very humble at first, like very nervous. Didn't really thought I was kind of like I believed I could do something cool, but I had a little bit of like imposter syndrome where I didn't really know if I was going to make it or not. So I just tried to like suck in as much information, as much coaching, like hung out at the gym as much as I could, was around the guys as much as I could. And for the most part, you know, Westside's a weird place because there's been so many eras to it. And there's so many different personalities in there that you could be there. The same 15 guys could be training there, and one guy could have an incredible experience because he gels with everybody and he's all good, or he keeps to himself and it's all good. And then someone with the exact same people there could have a fucking terrible experience and it could be awful. And I kind of had like a combination of the two. But yeah, like my mindset going in was just like, you fucking know nothing. Like I was just like, cause in New Hampshire before I moved out there, like I was a shit. Like if I went in and squatted 700 pounds in the gym, everybody was like, oh my God, you're the fucking best. Like you're sick. But out there, like that's a good bench press. That's not even a good squat. Like they don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And so, and also what I learned is like, it doesn't matter what you did before you got there. It mattered like what you did once you were there. So I just tried to be really humble and just try to learn as much as I could, and just try to like recognize that I was a small fish in a big pond all of a sudden instead of being the big fish. And yeah, it worked out pretty well. Like, you know, obviously I have some let's see how I can say this nicely. Like obviously I have some sour feelings about a bunch of shit that went on there. But like, I'm grateful for the opportunity that I had to train there and to be around those people. Even if I don't have relationships with a lot of them anymore, I'm still like super grateful because initially upon arrival, everyone there was pretty good to me and treated me with respect, and it helped me be like, a better lifter in the long run and a better coach, because even stuff there that I don't agree with, sometimes it's good to find the stuff that like you don't believe in to show you what you do believe in.
Yeah, I personally, I have some questions to ask.
Sure.
But you had talked about some of the athletes there. You said some of them were fine, and then some of them are like exceptional. For example, so Dave Hoff, some of the things that he's done are special. So I'm curious what, I guess, for example, a group of people, I guess, if people didn't care about what you did in New Hampshire, and I guess the standard is different in a new space. So I guess in general, what is the mentality when you're in the gym? So I'm trying to figure out what you might try to replicate at your gym in New Hampshire.
Yeah. So
what would you bring back to New Hampshire?
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff.
What the ideal weight room environment looks like.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that like I hope doesn't fucking leave Westside and never goes into any fucking gym because I thought it was so toxic. But there's a lot of stuff there that's very good. Like, all those stories of, like I trained through some pretty fucking wild injuries and pretty banged up. And I think that made me tougher and showed me that I wasn't like made of glass and that I could persevere and stuff. And, but like, you got to earn your fucking stripes. Like something I learned out there is like, if someone immediately accepts you and gives you everything immediately, they're probably full of shit. And if they make you work for that respect and they make you work for the secrets and the, all this stuff, then it's probably worth your time. And Hoff is one of those guys. Like, me and Hoff did not get along when I first got there. Hoff trained at night. I trained in the morning. We had a couple interactions that were not great. He's obviously a pretty intimidating guy, or he can be. And, I was a punk, and I ran my fucking mouth when I probably shouldn't have. And, but over the course of, 18 months or so, he saw me on a couple different occasions, like, kind of stick up for what I thought was right. And I think he respected that. And because of that, he kind of like slowly let me in, to the point where I was training with him. And then, the first time I left Westside, he still helped me when I was training at Laura Phelps's gym, and then got me invited back, and he trained me there. And then when we got booted the second time, he came with me, and he's just always stuck by me because he made me prove to him that I was the real deal. Right. So something like that, I think, is something that I'm bringing back to our gym, which I haven't said it yet, but it's called Anchor Athletics and Strength. Something that I'm bringing back to like my personal training group there is like, it's not going to be easy to train with me. I don't want to make it easy. I want there to be a process where I have to see if you're going to be a flake, if you're going to actually show up, if you're good to be around, like if you bring toxic energy, if you bring good energy. And I'm not letting anybody train with me unless I know that shit for a fact, because I want them to earn my respect and I want to earn their respect. Something that I will not be bringing back from Westside is the, we don't save pecs around here mentality, or the, you have to, like, losing is not an option no matter what mentality, because I think that you can be a respectful person, a smart person, and still be a fucking savagely competitive individual. You don't have to be a fucking asshole, and you don't have to kill yourself to be great. So if you're hurt and there's no reason to train right then there's no reason to train. And if you're, it's not worth having a potentially career changing, career ending, career altering injury to prove that you can do a fucking bigger good morning that day when you shouldn't be there in the fucking first place because you're hurt. So that's something that I think that is something that made Westside what it was. And that's great. That's not something I want to carry on with me later in life. But the other, knowing when to be the bulldog and when to bulldog the fuck up and make something happen, even though you don't feel great or whatever, I think is important. I think that's something I learned there. As far as, I think that the training group mentality, in theory, that came from there, I don't think was actualized in the setting that I was in there when I was training in the morning. But the theory of the training group, where it's all for one and one for all, I think is important moving forward, but only if it's real. If it's bullshit, it means fucking nothing. So it's like, what actually happens? Like, will you actually drive 4 hours to handle your training partners at a powerlifting meet? Will you actually do that, even though you're not lifting? If you'll actually do that, then that's cool. If you're just saying that you'll do that and you won't, that's worse than just saying you won't do it, as far as I'm concerned. Because, I like liken it to, my background in hockey, where it's like, if you're tired and you stay on the ice and you can't do your job effectively, I'd rather you not be on the fucking ice, because at least I know that you're not there. But if I see you there, I'm going to expect that you're able to do your job. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff from Westside as far as mentality that I think I carried through. But honestly, I learned the most about mentality and how to train, like the nerdy aspect of it, where it's like X's and O's, and how to train like emotionally and mentally. I learned the most from training with Hoff directly, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I thought that was, I think that's a nice changeover to your mentality and the finger gun. So I wrote down some comments. One of the things that I really liked was earning your stripes. But you had mentioned something about earning the big weights essentially. So I just wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit more. Obviously, you already have that mentality within yourself, right? You already have that wired. But I'm curious if, I guess, if you're running, or I guess what you're looking for in a training partner. What do you want to see in that person? How do they earn their big weights? For example, for me as an athlete, I mean, being in athletics, we have freshmen coming in that are superstars. They're more talented than anybody else. But how do you know that they're earning it, So I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, that's awesome question. And I had a experience yesterday, actually, when I was squatting that goes right to this. So the guy who bought the building that we're currently operating our gym out of is training with me. His name's Connor. And he is he's like a year older than me. I think he's 36 or 37 or whatever. We're roughly the same age, but he's very excitable. He wants to train. He trains too much, right? So when I said I was coming back and we're doing this thing, I said, you can train with me, but it's basically my way or the highway type thing. And he's been pretty bought in. But yesterday we were going in, and in my head, I was like, okay, like I'm not going to let him go over 3 plates on the squats. Like we want 3 plates and I want him to do 8 triples and I want him to be perfect. And I knew that he wasn't going to necessarily like that because he can handle bigger weights than that. He's stronger than that. But, I know that he needs to work on form and speed, right? So he comes in and he says to me, because we were squatting to a box, and he's like, what do you think about me going to a lower box? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, I just think I need to work on like the bottom end of my squat more. I want to make it a little harder, whatever. And as soon as he said that to me in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to let this guy go a little heavier today, because to me, he's showing me that he wants to fucking get after it. He's showing me that he wants to do the hard thing. He's not asking me to go to a higher box so he can handle bigger weights. He's asking me if he can go to a lower box to make it fucking harder. So to me, and I told him this, and I said, so then partway through the workout, I said, put a quarter on, and then I let him do his last set at 4 plates, which is a whole fucking plate over what I wanted him to do in the first place. And he handled it just fine, which I knew he could. But the fact that he came in and said, hey, I want to go to a lower box, I want to make it more difficult, to me, that showed that he was bought in. He trusted me. He wasn't questioning the weights that I was saying, which obviously goes a long way with me because I need you to be bought in. And also, like, he wants to fucking work hard. He doesn't want to just do the fun thing. He wants to do the hard thing so that he can get the results that are the actual fun thing. Like, he doesn't want to be good today. He wants to be good when it fucking matters at the meet. And so to me, that's what I expect. Like, and that is earning your fucking stripes to me, because he could have come in, used the same box, and there would have been nothing wrong with it, but it wouldn't have elevated him in my head to like how serious he was about it and how much he gave a shit. I think with like freshman athletes and younger athletes who are, they might be talented, right? And they might be more skilled than some of the older guys or whatever. But if they're not willing to do the double sessions and do the extra work and do the extra PT and all that stuff, like, talent's only going to get you so far. So it kind of weeds itself out. And the kids who are there, who are asking the questions and doing the extra work and looking at the older guys and saying, hey, you've been here for 4 years. Like, how do I garner the respect that you get? I want to do what you do. I want to know what you've been doing to survive through 4 years of a college sport, because it's not fucking easy. I get it. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
you can't like make somebody do that. But when you see it, you fucking know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of leading into another comment that I wrote down, or that you had made, and your luck doesn't run out. You just stop checking the boxes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other things that I had written down. And that's, I mean, you had said you do everything you got to do, and that's it. But I guess for the accountability part of that, I'm curious what some people were doing at Westside or with Hoff, and I guess what that accountability approach, what works best. For me, when I was for my high school baseball program, our head coach was a corrections officer, and the assistant coach, I believe, was an Army officer, and the third coach was a police officer. So they didn't care about your feelings and whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of accountability worked for me, and I liked it.
Yeah.
I benefited from that, but I don't think everyone benefits from that approach. So I'm curious as to what kind of accountability you did at Westside, or I guess what works in lifting.
Yeah. So for me, like it's this guy, Danny Blankenship, said it to me best. He's an old West Sider. He said that I don't need to be given the stick. I give myself the fucking stick. No one is as hard on me as me. Not a single person. I guarantee you. Anything anybody says about me, I'm probably said to myself or worse. So for me, I work better knowing that somebody is rooting for me, I do better, or I feel better about it if someone's like, positive affirmations, or I know they respect me or whatever. But the other end works for me personally too. And someone says that I won't be able to do something, I'm like, oh, okay, bet, like, let's fucking go. You know what I mean? Like that gets me fired up as well. Everybody loves that, like, being an underdog and all that stuff. So I think at Westside, the mentality there a lot, especially with Lou, is negative reinforcement always. Always. They talk about it in the movie, how, he doesn't focus on anything positive because what does that do? And it's like, well, I don't know, man. Like when I went 4 or 5 for 9 at the first WPO, almost bombed out on squats, had a terrible day. But Dave looked at me after and said, like, you earned some of my fucking respect today because you didn't give up on the day. Like that did more for me than telling me how shitty my squats looked. And, same thing, like when I totaled 2,500 and, he gave me a big hug and lift me up the ground. And then, same thing, like when I squatted a world record in single ply in September. And when the best powerlifter of all time tells you that he's proud of you for an accomplishment within the sport, you can't really beat that. There's nothing much more motivating than that. So I think that it's different for each person, because I know guys, I trained with a guy, Tyler Roy, we call him Snooky, and he trained in night crew with me and Hoff and all the guys and Val and everything. And he does not do well with the negative criticism. Like he doesn't do good with that. Like that's not what he needs. He needs someone to tell him he's the fucking man. He needs people to tell him like, you got this, you're the dude, we know you can do this. And he thrives on that. He does not thrive on telling him that he's a pussy. He does not do well with that, right? So recognizing who needs a slap on the ass and who needs a kick in the ass is a pretty important difference, I think, and then you have like my wife, Val, who doesn't seem to be affected by either. She's just is going to do it just because she's going to do it. So you could say negative things to her. You could say positive things to her. She's just a fucking maniac and she's just going to make it happen because that's who she is as a human being. Right. So I think that there's no blanket statement of like, this works, this doesn't. At Westside, it seemed to be one big blanket statement of Lou being hard on everybody and negative. Right. And like I said, like that's part of what made that building what it was or what it is or whatever. I don't really know what's going on over there now, but it there's an end expiration date. There you go. There's an expiration date for just negative stuff all the time. Eventually you have to tell someone they're doing a good job, or they're going to tell you to go fuck yourself. There's only so much you can take. Because I was fucking powered by the fuck yous for a long time. And then eventually you get to the point where it's like, man, I feel a lot better if somebody said, good job. Like, you know, I said it on a post a while back, like, I'm not saying fuck you. I'm saying fuck yeah. Like, let's go. You know, like, let's be, I would rather prove my supporters right than prove the people who are cheering against me wrong. It'll work either way. But living in that negative space is not good for things outside of whatever the venture is that negative space is within.
We're kind of going down, or I guess I just want to touch on a couple more of your posts from the past. Another one that I liked was the concept. I think you had said struggling does not define you, but it can help you.
Yeah.
So essentially turning that into a positive, you know, it's, for me, I did a presentation before and I used the concept of go deaf. Essentially just, obviously I'm deaf. So yeah. I would just say like, hey, I don't need to listen to your stuff, you know, like that kind of thing. And that was my quote. So I actually really like using the negatives for the better, you know, going from obviously your experience with a lot of struggles and growing from those struggles. I'm curious what, for your athletes or maybe yourself, I mean, when you're struggling, for example, if you're ready to go for another WPO or something like that, I guess on a game day, what your plan is, what plan you have in place.
Yeah. So it's just like, it just is, right? So struggle just is. You can't like equate it to anything. Like, you're either going to get through it or you're fucking not. And so, you know, currently right now, like what I'm going through with trying to run this gym, and we're living a pretty good drive away from it right now because we're trying to buy a house and all this stuff. You know, my training's taken a little bit of a hit and it's been very frustrating, but I like, you know, you just decide to not let those struggles like turn you into a whiny little pussy, basically. And just like, they just are what they are, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you show up to a meet and the fucking, you know, the bars are fucked up. The platforms are like, who cares? Everybody has to deal with it. Everybody there has to deal with it, and nobody cares about your excuse, right? So those struggles that, you know, you might be having in the moment, like, they don't define you good or bad. They just are. So just, you either figure them out or you don't. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things where I think when I was like, you know, if you had asked me that question a couple of years ago, you might get a different answer from me. But it's the same thing, like, you know, with baseball or whatever, like, you show up and it's shitty weather. Well, fucking everybody's playing in it. So, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. And no matter what you're going through, I guarantee you somebody's gone through fucking way worse and been more successful. So you can figure it out either way. So with that stuff, I try to just, it's hard because you don't want to be like impossibly positive, like where you're just like positive all the time. It's not realistic. You can't be like that. But there gets to a certain point where it's just like, all right, you're either going to fucking handle it or you're going to go home. Like, you're either going to do it or you're not. So that's sort of like how I've turned some of this stuff around in my head to make it a little easier, where it's like, this is what's happening. So you can either like curl up in a little ball and cry about it, or you can fucking face it and make it happen. And that mindset is ever evolving for me.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on another topic that I wanted to bring up, but it's not what happens doesn't matter. It's how you react. And that was one of your posts And that just kind of reminds me of an old athlete that I used to work with. This person was from Africa, came in as a freshman, and I believe he broke the school record in the relay, which he was a great athlete. And I was driving home in the middle of winter. He was running indoor track. And I believe it was snowing that day. I'm driving home just off campus, and I saw him walking. And it was like midnight. We just finished the meet, and he had jeans and a jacket on. He was walking home. He lives just off campus. And I pulled over and I was like, "You all right? What's going on?" And he was like, "Hey, don't have a car, so I'm just walking. I'm just taking it as it is, just moving on."
Sure.
And he's one of the best athletes that were on campus. So it's cool because he was super nonchalant about it. He was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. It's snowing, it's cold, it sucks, but whatever. I'm moving on." And I think that's a great attitude to have. It's good. So yeah, I'll probably start to wrap up a little bit now. But
Sure.
I think one of the last things that I wanted to go back to was that comment of go deaf, or that concept that I told you, or that I tell some of my athletes. And I liked a quote that you had said, "There's no downside to people doubting you." Could you mind expanding on that a little bit?
Yeah, like it's just the downside is only if you allow it to be a negative thing too, right? But like doubting me, like that doesn't affect me. Like your opinion, that's like I don't know who I'm stealing it from, but like your opinion of me is none of my business. Like it doesn't fucking matter, right? Because it only matters like how I feel about myself. So there's no downside to someone doubting me, because like if they say you're not going to do it and you do it, then it doesn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's just one of those things where it's like the only downside to that is if you don't accomplish it and you say like, "Oh, you were right," to the guy who said that you couldn't do it. But even if someone doubts you and you attempt it and you're not successful, you already gave that dude the middle finger, because they're saying you can't do it because they don't even want you to fucking try, because they don't have the balls to try it themselves. You know what I mean? Like that dude's the pussy because he's scared to try it and he knows that, but he's telling you can't do it because he thinks he can hold you back. So like if someone's saying like, "Nah, that'll never work. Nah, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. You can't do that." And then even if you don't end up able to accomplish those things, like you already pushed past what those people wanted you to do. So their comment means nothing. And it's more about the process of attempting to do something than actually doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like the process of me squatting 1,100 pounds felt way more, I got way more out of the process than the day that I did it for the first time. The day that I did it for the first time, to me, was kind of like yeah, no shit, I'm going to do this. I've been fucking working at this for however long. Like, it's not surprising to me. I knew I was going to fucking do this. But the training leading up to it was really valuable because you don't know if you're going to do it. You don't know if you're going to make it through. You don't know if you're going to get hurt or whatever. And so the process is kind of more important than the outcome. And just to share like a small story, I've talked about it on podcasts before, but before I went to my first multiply powerlifting meet, this guy named Bill Crawford, who's a big strong man, and he's from New Hampshire. I was training with him, and he said, when I got to the meet, he's like, make sure you sit around and kind of look around and appreciate what you're seeing and who's there, because what happens is you get to the top of the mountain and you forget to fucking walk to the top of the mountain. So take a minute to look around. And I still remember sitting in that world from looking around. It's the same thing, because I had doubters then, and I had people say, you won't be able to do shit. You won't be able to do whatever. And enjoying the process and looking around during the process, and by taking a second to be like, this is sick that I'm doing this, and people said that I wouldn't be able to, is more valuable than the end result to me anyway. And obviously it's a cliche saying, but you do, like, the end result is important. Like, you want to be successful, but if you can enjoy the process, the outcome doesn't truly matter, because the process you'll get so much more out of.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was talking with JM about. And it's kind of like, I mean, doing all the work, you did all the work, the dieting, everything just for that one split second. And it's, when the bar's touching your chest, it comes down, and that's it. That's the moment, it's everything that you worked for. The world's watching. And you're under the bright lights, people are looking down at you, and you either do it or you don't. So I think that really wraps up nicely. For me, obviously, I've never gone for over 1,000 pounds in the squat rack, but I'm curious, what is it like? What are you thinking about exactly? What's going through your head when you're holding the bar with 1,100 pounds? So I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, so it's crazy because when I first started handling like bigger weights, like, the 8s and 7 8s and 9s and stuff, Brandon Lilly had just torn both of his quads off and blew his knees off in a big raw meet. And I remember seeing that, and I couldn't get it out of my fucking head. I kept watching the video and I couldn't stop watching it. I couldn't stop like thinking about it when I was squatting, and then I just started like accepting it. So I always like push my hips back, take a big breath, pull my chest through, and then stand up. And as I'm bringing my chest through, I always think through my head, like, I'm going to blow my knees off. I always think it every time. And the reason I think that it's helped me is not to compare myself to a fucking warrior or whatever. But they say that like samurai, and like gladiator people and all that, they used to like picture their death before a battle, because once you accept the possibility of it, it has already happened in your mind and you have no fear. So for me, it's like, I've had some weird knee injuries and forearm stuff, and I've seen 2 broken arms from benching, and it's wild, right? So that when you accept it, it's not scary anymore, because it's like, fuck it, like it's either going to happen or it's not. Like, and that has nothing to do with how I perform. Like, it's just like you could do everything perfect and get fucked up under those weights. It doesn't matter, right? So for me, and I don't know if it's right or not, Louis got pissed when I told him that, but I just think about that every time, because it kind of just like relaxes me, while simultaneously like make sure I know the weight of the situation, no pun intended. Where it's like, you can get really fucked up doing this, but it doesn't matter, because you're gonna do it anyway. You're already here, so let's fucking go.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's your mind's at peace kind of thing, right? Yep. So I guess my last question for you to wrap up: what was the most like holy crap moment that you had in the gym, or what's something that you saw in the gym that made you just like shake your head, just being like, okay.
Yeah,
I guess I'm fishing for more stories.
Sure. Yeah. I got a couple. I've seen Hoff do 575 floor press for a triple. That was fucking insane. I've seen Hoff dump 1270 off his back, get back under the bar after, and squat it. That was fucking nuts. And then, the stuff that I've seen my wife do has been pretty fucking crazy. I mean, she did like 515 plus 200 and chain for a double, just briefs. Like, she's, I think probably the craziest, most nerve-wracking lift that I have been around for was my wife Val benching 429. She had some really gnarly forearm pain. And we personally know 2 women who have broken their arms benching. And both of them were benching less than what she was trying. And it doesn't get much more nerve-wracking than being the guy handing out to your wife a weight that could shatter her fucking arm. And she benched it and it was sick. I think that was probably one of the coolest. And then, and then obviously, I trained with Hoff, like getting ready for the 3,100 total. And there's not like one specific thing. It's more so like the vibe of the whole thing. We just knew something special was going to happen. It's very rare to put 100 pounds on your total. It's even more rare to put 100 pounds on your total when you already total 3,000 fucking pounds. So that training cycle, especially since we got, booted from the gym with like 4 weeks before the meet, and there was all this stuff that was a total shit show. That was pretty crazy. Also, shit, dude, I've seen some pretty crazy stuff when it comes to lifting weights. I think, I'll tell this story. This is really cool. WPO 2017 was the first year back. And Matt Manuth, who's like nicest guy ever, he squatted, benched. He was going for the 242 total record, and he's pulled like 740 or something like in the past, like for reps. He's fucking good, like, right? So he opens with 675, and that's all he needed for the 242 record that had stood forever. And he goes to pull it, gets it to the top, blows his bicep off, and we're all like, fuck, like shit. And if he bombs out, like I would have placed top 3, right? So I had like some like mixed emotions. But so they tape his elbow, they tape his arm. He goes back out for the second one and tears something in his wrist and drops it. And it's like, holy shit, dude, this guy's gonna miss the 242 world record on some like stupid injury bullshit. Like there's no fucking way, right? And then they tape his wrist and he goes out, and I don't know how the fuck he did it, but he pulled it, and the crowd went fucking crazy. I went crazy, and then I was like getting bumped out of placing top 3, and it was just like the coolest thing because, a guy like that who's like a super nice guy, it's really cool to see him be successful. So yeah, I mean, I've seen some pretty cool stuff. I mean, I'll give you one more. Can I do one more?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Keep it going.
So 2018 APF Nationals. I had totaled 2502 the day before, and that qualified me for WPO. We were still at Westside. We were training at night. There was a lot of tension, and Alex Kovac he was the second day of Nationals. He's a smaller body weight. So he opened with like 748. Well, I was spotting him in the back, and I like heard his suit rip, and we looked, and there's a rip in the back of his suit. We didn't tell him. And we were like, all right, we'll just see what happens. He goes out, squats 748, misses 8 something, and gets fucking smashed by it. Like it wasn't even close. Like he gets fucking obliterated by it. And he's like, fuck it, give it to me. He calls for the world record, which is like 903 at the time. And now he doesn't know that he's got a big hole in his canvas. Goes, and I'm in the back. You can see in the back of the video, you can see me. I'm like ready to run and try and save him if it rips, because if it rips in the bottom, he's fucked. Like totally fucked. So, and he ends up squatting it. and for a world record, and we go fucking nuts. It was like us versus the world, like fuck everybody, like, and that was really fucking cool to be a part of that, because our whole weekend like was a big middle finger to a lot of people for us to both go there and have really good days under like some of the strictest judging that you can have for multiply. So yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be around some like really fucking cool experiences and see some really cool stuff.
That's awesome. That's crazy. Obviously, I mean, we're going to definitely have to ask you for more stories down the road.
Sure.
Of course, if you let me.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, to wrap up, where can our viewers find you, and what do you have in plan for 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, for sure. So my personal Instagram is AnthonyCW13. The Trigger Warning Instagram is Trigger_Warning_Conjugate. And then the new gym page is Anchor Athletics and Strength NH, or Anchor Athletics NH, I believe. It's linked in my bio, so if you find one of them, you'll find all three. Yeah, we just bought this gym. We're going to be pushing that. We have a meet that we're doing April 30th. We're going to do the grand reopening April 2nd. The Trigger Warning stuff is still full bore. We're working on new shirts. We just did these ones a little bit ago. Just dropped these.
Cool.
And yeah, it's more of the same. The only thing that's going to change now is like we have a brick and mortar spot to operate out of, and I'm lucky enough to have my wife as like my business partner to help me through everything. So yeah, we're working on just continuing to put out really good content for people and good coaching, and then obviously a place for people to train that has a good atmosphere and is full of people who want to help others get better.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll add all of that information in the link below.
Great.
But again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course, man. And hey, I just want to say, I think what you're doing is really fucking cool. Obviously didn't know how this was going to go. Yeah, of course. I didn't know how this was going to go with, the interpreter or whatever. And it's pretty seamless. So I think that it's really badass that you kind of like threw your hat into the ring and just started podcasting, because the only way that you're going to do something is just to go fucking do it. And so I commend you for that, dude. I think it's really sick. If you ever need help with anything, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask, and I'll help you in any way that I can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll definitely keep you in mind. And I would definitely love to have you back on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.